Okay, this is a review for Chapter 33 test. You have a review sheet. The test itself is, 20 multiple choice, a couple of terms that you need to write a description for, and then you also have 20 fill in the blanks or short answers. So I want to go through some of this with you. In America, the Depression caused a decade-long decline in the birth rate. Birth rates went down. President Herbert Hoover believed that the Great Depression could be ended by directly assisting businesses and banks, by keeping faith in the efficiency of the industrial system, by relying on the American tradition of rugged individualism and helping farms. But Hoover did not believe in providing direct aid to the people of America. This is a big shift when Roosevelt gets elected. Hoover's approach to the Great Depression was to offer federal assistance to businesses and banks, but not to individuals. Then there's a question here on the Bonus Expeditionary Army, the Bonus Army, and their demands for immediate full payment of their World War I bonus payments that were promised to them. Hoover's public image was severely damaged by the way he handled the Bonus Army. Their protests were attacked by the Army itself, so this was putting veterans against current Army personnel. You need to be able to define what the New Deal is, and this is FDR's plan to attack the Great Depression and his 15 different federal assistance programs, sometimes referred to as alphabet soup. He was able to put this into place in the first 100 days of his administration because he had filibuster-proof Senate, and he also had huge legislative majorities in the House of Representatives. Most vigorous champion of the dispossessed, that is the poor and minorities in Roosevelt's administration, this was probably Eleanor Roosevelt, his wife. She was kind of considered the champion of the dispossessed. So this phrase, 100 days, it refers to the first months of FDR's presidency. One striking new feature of the 1932 presidential election results was that it clearly showed a shift in African Americans in the way they've decided now to vote for the Democrats instead of the party of Lincoln, the Republicans. They switched their allegiance from the Republican Party. Franklin Roosevelt assumed the presidency in March 1933 when he received unprecedented congressional support. And remember that when Roosevelt is first elected, the inaugural date is still in March. That does not change to January for another 4 years. President Roosevelt's chief administrator of relief, this was Harry Hopkins, administrator of relief, matched the New Deal critics below with a cause or slogan that they promoted. So we have Father Coughlin, Huey Long, Townsend, and Hoover. So that's down there, 19, 20, 21. So Coughlin, say that Coughlin talked about social justice. Huey Long talked about every man a king, making every man a king. Francis Townsend had a holy crusade for liberty. And then Herbert Hoover promoted old age pensions. Hoover and old age pensions. Senator Huey Long of Louisiana gained national popularity by promising to give every family $5,000. Make every man a king. And so he was also a guy that wanted to rob from the rich and give to the poor. He wanted to make huge taxes for the rich and give every man, every family, $5,000. The AAA, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, reduces agricultural production goes out and purchases cattle from farmers and kills it, goes out and pays farmers not to farm, not to produce crops. It's very controversial, but it's supposed to really attack the laws of supply and demand. When you diminish the supply, it increases prices. It really didn't work very well. Both ratified in the 1930s. You should know the 20th Amendment and the 21st Amendment. So the 20th Amendment shortens the time between presidential election and inauguration, changes the inaugural date to January, and then the 21st Amendment repeals prohibition, repeals the 18th Amendment, ends prohibition. The Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl contributed to bringing about or developing dry farming techniques. The Dust Bowl had a huge drought, lack of rain, and increased wind. The cultivation of marginal farmlands on the Great Plains and soil erosion. All of these things contributed to the Dust Bowl. Dust Bowl migrants tended to head to California. They left Oklahoma and headed to California looking for seasonal work in the fields. Most Okies in California escaped deprivation and uncertainty of seasonal farm labor when they found jobs in the defense industries for World War II. Eventually, World War II and the defense factories of California helped to bring jobs to the Okies. The federally owned Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA, was seen as a particular threat to the private electrical industry in this region. So private electrical utility industry hated this fact that the TVA was coming. The strongest criticism levied against the TVA was that it represented a creeping socialism. Social Security Act, 1935. Social Security Act provided for old age pensions, supported the blind and physically handicapped, economic provisions for the blind and disabled, and some unemployment insurance. Court packing plan of Roosevelt reflected that Roosevelt had a desire to make the Supreme Court more sympathetic to his New Deal programs. The courts were striking down some of the New Deal programs, so Roosevelt was trying to pack the court. This scheme failed. However, the court did begin to become a little bit more sympathetic to the New Deal programs, and that's that switch in time that saves 9. One of the justices does resign, making the ratio a little bit more friendly towards New Deal initiatives. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal was most notable for providing moderate social reform without radical revolutionary or reactionary fascism. So it does have a creeping socialism, a lot more government involvement, but it doesn't have the radical or revolutionary kind of fascism that occurs in Italy and Germany during this great worldwide depression. Those are the multiple choice questions. Then we have some fill in the blanks. These will come directly from your chapter 33 readings. So hopefully you have spent some time reading the textbook. Term used by FDR 1932 acceptance speech. All right, he talks about his reform program as the New Deal. I bring America a New Deal. The early New Deal agency that worked to solve problems of unemployment and conservation by employing youth in reforestation. Anything that had to do with planting trees out in Kansas or going out and building roads in Colorado or fighting forest fires in Colorado. That's the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps. Large federal employment program established in 1935 under Harry Hopkins. Jobs in areas from road building to art. That's the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. Widely displayed symbol of this WPA and also the widely displayed symbol of the National Recovery Administration, the NRA. This is the Blue Eagle The Blue Eagle is seen on many posters, and that is the NRA. The New Deal Farm Agency, that's the AAA. The Agricultural Adjustment Act. The Farm Agency is the AAA. The drought-stricken plains area from which hundreds of thousands of Okies were driven, that's the Dust Bowl. The New Deal Agency that aroused strong conservative criticism over production of low-cost electrical power. That's the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority. New Deal program that financed old age pensions. That's Social Security. Roosevelt's scheme for gaining Supreme Court approval. That's the court packing plan. What are Roosevelt's 3 R's? Reform, recovery, relief. Reform, recovery, relief. Who was the first female cabinet member? Frances Perkins. And her position was Secretary of Labor. The newly formed professional football team in the Philadelphia region showed their enthusiasm for the NRA by naming their team the Eagles. How did Henry Ford, feel about this government agency called the NRA? And he referred to it, rather than the eagle, as the buzzards. He was not a big fan of the NRA. What book was the Uncle Tom's Cabin of the Dust Bowl? And that's The Grapes of Wrath, written by John Steinbeck. What did the 20th Amendment provide for? That's removal or changing of the inaugural date. What does the classic witticism, a switch in time saves 9, what does that mean? It means that there's 9 judges on the Supreme Court because of the failed attempt by Roosevelt's court packing plan. Popular term for the special session of Congress in early 1933 that passed vast quantities of Roosevelt initiative legislation. That's the first 100 days. What did Roosevelt hope to accomplish with the FDIC and the banking holiday? Restore American confidence in the banking systems, and people would remove their money from the coffee cans under their beds and put them back into our banking system. And who was the president of the United States when Black Tuesday occurred? Herbert Hoover. And Roosevelt had a small group of reform-minded intellectuals, predominantly youngish college professors, who authored much of the New Deal legislation. They were popularly referred to as Roosevelt's brain trust. So there's about 45 questions. Chapter 33, Great Depression Test. That concludes the review.